My Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Denver, Sunday Night Football. We got a free pick from Vegas Runner. Who do you like and why?
To the Tebow list, Denver Broncos. I like the under in this game a lot, and we have what I call the perfect storm here. You have last year when these two teams played, they scored 52 points. Everyone remembers that. You have a primetime television ESPN game, which is almost always going to be shaded a little bit towards the bettor's bias, which is the over, right? You have the preseason, which saw high scoring, and because of that, these week one totals are higher than years past. To me, that looks like the perfect storm for an inflated total. Add Manning to that mix, which his name alone sounds like offense. And I think this number is just way too high. Last year's game, the might have scored 52 points, but the total was only 34. I know it was with Tebow, but Manning's been out for well over a year. So don't expect him to walk in there and put up 400, not against this defense.
What's your take?
We don't talk about what team we have before we do these videos. I thought yours play was going to be on the side. I was interested in what you had to say. I like the over here.
Oh, boy.
I mean, do I have time to talk about it a little
Absolutely.
bit? You're looking at a team here. Last year, the Jets.
So you like
You love
over
that
the
play
Jets?
that much. You love that, my play best bet.
Denver averaged 19.3 points per game last year. The prior 5 years, they averaged between 20 and 23. So it wasn't a minor tick down. It was basically about what they've done the last 5 or 6 years. When Tebow's on the field, you run the football, you take time off the clock. You take a look at their turnover margin last 2 years, they were minus 21 in the turnover margin. The last 8 years with Manning playing, his teams were a plus 73 on the turnover margin. Big advantage there for Denver. That's where I think the major deal is.
Rebuttal. Manning against a 3-4 defense has had trouble his entire career. And now you're going after one of the best 3-4s in all of football. I don't think he's going to have the kind of game everyone's expecting. And let's not forget, here's a Denver team that now, because Manning's there and not Tebow, they got to learn a whole new offense because they were a run team first. So maybe a couple weeks down the road, I'll look to go over on Denver, but not this early in the season.
All right, so let's talk about this. It's a reoccurring theme early. When you have a team that changes schematically on offense or defense, they usually underperform early in the season when they get used to it. But that affects Pittsburgh too. A team that's not used to a lot of disruptions, new offense from coordinator Haley. So now I think they might start a little slow. You've got Wallace, who sat out. Yeah, he runs a lot of flat, a lot of deep patterns, still limitations. They lost their first-round pick who was going to start at right guard. So I think there's some downsides on Pittsburgh's offense. Here's the thing that concerns me, though. Ryan Clark, the other safety, he has the sickle cell trait. He can't play in Denver. He tried to play and actually had his spleen removed.
Right.
No, I mean, this guy's a warrior, man. But he hasn't been able to play since. That's been many years ago. Their backup safeties are thin, let me tell you. And Troy needs Clark. Clark is he doesn't get the attention at all. Very valuable key point. Plus, Pittsburgh's linebackers a little dinged up.
But don't you think Haley, though, was brought in there so they run the football because they were mad at how the offense was just throwing the ball?
I think so, but I think the question is, I do think the game will be somewhat shortened. I do. I think it's been overstated how much they're going to run. But the case could be made that the Steelers have the best receivers in football.
Tell me why
I mean,
I'm
if you
wrong
go one
again.
to
Well, you're the Pittsburgh expert.
That's
Are they
what I'm
missing
saying.
2 of their best 3 defensive players?
There's a lot of the linebackers. Harrison is a question mark. There's some guys, a lot of guys dinged up. So a lot of questions marks. And I would advise waiting the game time and seeing with Harrison specifically. He's key because when you only have Woodley, they don't have any other pass rush. And we saw it last year when they didn't play with each other much because both were hurt. They need both of those outside linebackers. None of their D-line gets sacks. So it's really the outside linebackers that get sacks. Without the 2, I think they're limited.
And you talk about the schemes, having to learn a new scheme. They weren't a running team at the beginning of the season. Tebow came in as the season went on. He wasn't the guy that they had planned at the beginning of the season. So they had to adjust to that one player. So these guys are used to that normal passing offense. You
don't think Del Rio's going to shore up that Denver defense? I mean,
What does that even mean? Think he's going to try harder?
No, he's a great defensive coach. Look at what he did with that Jacksonville team. The team couldn't score 10 points.
But didn't Denver have a good defense last year?
Exactly.
So how are they going to shore him up?
He's going to be even better.
The only reason Denver's defense was better last year is because the offense was on the field longer, running the ball, running the ball. Because if you take a look at the amount of time
I agree.
they were on the field, they were no better than they were before.
I agree. That's why they brought over Jack Del Rio.
All right. One last point is this is something that actually, again, Fezzik was talking about, and we did an interview with him for our radio show, and actually you can get that interview at pregameradio.com. We actually break away the best interviews and put them up by themselves, pregameradio.com. He says he is looking under to every game this week. He's not playing them all, but it's exactly what you said, a combination of the preseason scoring, and week one usually has been a low scoring. It wasn't last year. He thinks it's an aberration because of the lockout and how everything changed. And people are looking at last year and they're forgetting the history.
Great point. They weren't even tackling last year in practice.
You got to throw those stats out.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've really talked this out well. Now it's time for the official pick.
Pittsburgh, Denver, primetime football. Go under 44. That's my free pick in this game. It's the perfect storm. Inflated week one totals based on what the preseason gave us. Primetime game always shaded towards the over. And last year's final score, 52 points, but the total was only 34. It's over 10 points higher this time around. I like the under.
All right, good discussion. It went to that second level again, which I always like. You know, I tell you, I think that whole looking towards the under in the preseason makes a ton of, or I'm sorry, in week one makes a ton of sense here. Not in every game, but cherry picking them. So I'm leaning that way myself. I tell you, as a Pittsburgh guy, I'm not optimistic about this game. I lean Denver. All right, guys, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv. Talk to you then.
Pregame.com.